colors that did not belong to Earth. Creatures from across the galaxy gathered in the market of shadows. They came to trade, to sell, and to buy. The air smelled of smoke, iron, and fear. Somewhere far below, chains clattered and a voice shouted, calling for the next slave to be brought forward. The slave market was no secret. Everyone knew about it. It was a place where lives had no value, where flesh was sold like tools. Merchants smiled, buyers argued, and guards carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Some cages held tall creatures with wings. Some had short ones with metal grafted into their bodies. All waited for the highest bidder. In one cage near the back sat a girl. She looked small compared to the others, almost broken. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, and her body covered in faint scars. Her eyes, however, still held a quiet fire. She did not beg. She did not cry. She sat in silence as if waiting for something that had not yet come. The auctioneer, a tall alien with skin like glass, stepped onto the platform. His voice was sharp, echoing through the market. "Next!" he barked. Guards dragged the girl forward, chains around her wrists and ankles. She stumbled but did not fall. The crowd leaned in, curious. The auctioneer lifted her chin with a metal rod. "A female of no value," he announced. "Weak, untrained, unwanted by her own kind. Who will take her?" The buyers laughed. Some shook their heads. One alien with scales like stone muttered, "She would not survive a single day of labor." Another said, "Not worth the credits. Too thin, too broken." The girl kept her eyes low. She heard the words, but she gave no answer. She knew what they saw, a slave with no use. A body too weak, a spirit too silent. Still she refused to bow. Minutes passed. No one raised a hand. No one spoke. The auctioneer's smile faded. He slammed the rod against the platform. "No one?" he demanded. The crowd stayed silent. Whispers spread. "Throw her out. Feed her to the beasts. She's worthless," the auctioneer growled in frustration. "Very well. If no one will take her, she goes to the pits." The girl's heart tightened. The pits meant death, not fast but slow and cruel. Still, she did not move. If this was her end, she would face it without begging. And then, just as the guards turned to drag her away, a voice cut through the noise, calm, strong, different. "I'll claim her." The words echoed across the market. The crowd fell silent. Heads turned, searching for the speaker. From the far side of the platform, a man stepped forward. He was not like the others. He was human. The aliens stared in surprise. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Few dared to walk into the slave markets, fewer still to buy. Yet here he was, tall, steady, his eyes hard as steel. The auctioneer blinked. "You?" he asked, almost mocking. "You will claim her? Why?" "She is nothing." The man did not answer at once. He looked at the girl, meeting her eyes for the first time. For a brief moment, she felt something strange, something she had not felt in years. Recognition, safety, hope. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the stone. "Unlock the chains," he said. His voice was low but carried power. The guards hesitated. "She is weak," one warned. "Not worth," the man cut him off. "I said unlock her." The auctioneer laughed nervously. "As you wish, human, but you are wasting credits." He pressed a button and the chains around her wrists and ankles clicked open. The girl's arms fell free, though she could barely lift them. She looked at the man, still unsure. Who was he? Why would he claim her when no one else would? The crowd began to whisper again. A human taking a useless slave? Foolish. Maybe he has strange tastes. But the man ignored them. He offered no explanation. He only reached out his hand, not to drag her, but to guide her. Slowly, carefully, she stepped down from the platform. For the first time in years, she was outside the cage. The air felt different, lighter. Yet fear still hung in her chest. She did not know this man. She did not know his reason. Still, she followed him as he walked toward the edge of the market. Guards watched, aliens muttered, and the auctioneer shook his head. No one wanted her. No one cared. But the human had said 4 words that changed everything. "I'll claim her." And with that, the girl's story began. The girl walked behind the man, her bare feet touching the cold stone floor of the market. The voices of the crowd followed them like whispers of ghosts. Some laughed, some muttered in anger. Others shook their heads, certain the human was a fool. But the man did not look back. He walked with calm steps as if he had done this many times before. The girl studied him. His clothes were simple, made of dark fabric, but his boots and belt showed he was no poor wanderer. At his side hung a weapon, small but sharp, the kind she had never seen before. His hair was dark, his face marked with faint scars, and his eyes carried a strange weight, like someone who had fought battles and survived them. He had claimed her, but he had not spoken to her. Not a single word. She felt both fear and curiosity. Why had he chosen her? She had nothing to offer. She was weak, broken, unwanted even by her own kind. At the edge of the market he stopped. The guards let them pass, though some stared too long. A group of alien merchants chuckled behind them. Humans are strange, one said, always chasing what others throw away. The man ignored them. He turned to the girl for the first time outside the platform. "Can you walk?" he asked. His voice was calm, steady, not cruel. She nodded, though her legs trembled. "Good," he said. "Keep close. The market is dangerous once you leave the gates." She wanted to ask his name, but the words stuck in her throat. It had been too long since she had spoken to anyone who treated her like more than an object. They stepped into the city streets. The Market of Shadows was only one part of this place. Beyond the gates stretched a maze of alleys, neon lights and towers built from metal and bone. Strange ships flew above, their engines humming like storms. The smell of oil and fire filled the air. The girl kept her head low, but she could feel the eyes of others on her. Some looked at her with pity, others with hunger. But most eyes stayed on the man, the human who had dared to buy what no one wanted. They reached a quiet street where the noise of the market faded. The man stopped again and finally spoke. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated. Her name felt like dust, forgotten and broken. But she whispered, "Lyra." The man nodded once. "Lyra, I am Kale," the name struck her. Simple, human, yet heavy. Kyle. He continued walking and she followed. "Do you know why no one wanted you?" he asked. His tone was not mocking. It was curious. Lyra stayed silent. She did not know the answer herself. Was it because she looked weak? Because she was not like the others? Or was it because of the secret she carried? The one she never spoke aloud. Kale glanced at her but did not push. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "What they saw does not define you." Those words hit her harder than chains ever had. She looked at him with wide eyes. Did he really believe that? Before she could speak, a noise echoed down the alley. Heavy boots. A group of aliens stepped from the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly. "Bounty hunters." Well, the leader sneered. He was tall, with metal plates running down his arms. A human with a worthless slave. "You must be lost." Kale's hand moved to his weapon, but slowly, with control. "Keep walking," he told Lyra quietly. The bounty hunters laughed. "She's not worth anything in the market," the leader said. "But to the right buyer, even trash has value. Hand her over, human, and maybe we'll let you live." Lyra froze. Her chest tightened. This was it. He would give her up. He would trade her life to save his own. That was how the galaxy worked. That was what she had learned. But Kale did not step aside. His eyes stayed cold, steady. "You'll regret following me," he said. In a blink, his weapon was in his hand. It was not like the blasters the aliens carried. It was smaller, sharper, glowing faintly blue. The fight was quick, brutal. Kyle moved with precision, striking before the bounty hunters could react. Two fell in seconds. Another tried to fire, but Kale twisted his arm and threw him against the wall. The leader roared, swinging a blade, but Kale ducked low and drove his weapon into the alien's chest. Silence fell. The hunters lay scattered, groaning or still. Kyle wiped the blade and looked at Lyra. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, too stunned to speak. "Good. Then we keep moving." He turned, walking as if nothing had happened. Lyra followed, her heart racing. She had seen warriors before. She had seen killers. But Kale was different. He did not fight for blood. He fought with purpose. He fought for her. For the first time in her life, Lyra wondered if maybe she was not worthless. Maybe someone saw something in her. Something she herself had forgotten. As they disappeared into the shadows of the city, one thought burned in her mind. Who exactly was this human stranger? The city was restless that night. Ships roared above, neon signs flickered, and shadows moved in every alley. Kale led Lyra through the maze, his steps fast but steady. She tried to keep close, though her legs still shook from the fight. Her wrists burned where the chains had been. Even without iron, she still felt bound. They turned into a narrow street lit only by the glow of broken lamps. Kyle slowed. He scanned the rooftops, the corners, the silence. He had the look of someone who expected trouble. Lyra finally whispered, "Why? Why did you fight for me?" Kale did not answer at once. His eyes stayed on the dark shapes above them. Then he said, "Because you were not meant to die in a cage." The words were simple, but they sank deep into her. She wanted to ask more, but before she could, a sudden sound broke the air, a sharp whistle. From the rooftops, shadows leapt. A dozen alien hunters dropped down, blocking the street. Their armor glimmered, their weapons ready. Kale pulled Lyra behind him. "They tracked us," he muttered. The leader of the group stepped forward, his voice cold. "Human, you killed our brothers. You think you can walk free?" He pointed at Lyra. "The girl is ours. Hand her over, and we will give you a quick death." Lyra's chest tightened. Again the same words, the same offer. Always her life, for someone else's. She waited for Kale's answer, half expecting him to let her go. But Kale did not move aside. His hand gripped his weapon tighter. "If you want her," he said, "you'll have to go through me." The hunters laughed, their voices harsh. "So be it," the fight exploded. Energy blasts lit the alley with blue and red flashes. Kale moved like water, fast and precise. He struck with his blade, disarming one, dodging another's strike, always keeping himself between Lyra and danger. But there were too many. The hunters pressed closer. One grabbed Lyra's arm, dragging her back. Panic surged through her. She kicked, clawed, but her body was too weak. "Kale," she cried. In that moment, something inside her woke. She remembered hidden paths, secret doors from her childhood before slavery. Her bloodline had known this city once. She pulled hard, slipping from the hunter's grasp, and shouted, "This way!" She darted down a side alley. Kale followed instantly, cutting through another attacker. The hunters gave chase, their footsteps pounding. Lyra's mind raced. She guided Kale through tight passages, down crumbling stairways, across bridges of rusted steel. The city was a labyrinth, but she remembered places others did not. Places only her people had once walked. They reached an old sewer gate hidden behind broken walls. Lyra pushed it open, her small hands trembling. "Inside," she gasped. Kale hesitated for only a moment, then pulled her through. The gate shut behind them. Darkness swallowed the world. The sewer tunnels were damp, filled with dripping water and echoes. Kale lit a small lamp from his belt. The faint glow showed cracked stone and endless passageways. "They won't follow easily down here," Lyra whispered. Kale looked at her with sharp eyes. "How do you know these tunnels?" Lyra lowered her gaze. "Because my family once lived above them, long ago, before." Her voice trailed off. Kale studied her but said nothing. He could see she carried secrets, but he would not force them yet. They walked deeper into the tunnels, the sound of pursuit fading behind them. For the first time since leaving the market, there was silence. Lyra's legs finally gave out. She collapsed against the wall, her breath ragged. Kyle knelt beside her, checking the wounds on her arms. "You're hurt," he said. "It's nothing," she whispered. "I've been hurt worse." Kale's jaw tightened. Not anymore, his words confused her. Why would a stranger care? Why would he fight, bleed, and risk death for her? She wanted to ask, but exhaustion pulled at her. Kale gave her water from his flask. She drank slowly, her body trembling. Minutes passed. The air was heavy with damp and silence. Then Lyra finally asked, "Why are you here, Kale? Why a human in a place like this?" He leaned against the wall, his eyes on the shadows. "Because there are debts I must pay, and enemies who think I should already be dead." His answer gave no peace, only more questions. But his voice carried a weight she could not ignore. He was not here by chance. Far above, the hunters still searched. Lyra knew they would not stop. They had seen her face. They knew she lived. And there were others, far greater, far stronger, who wanted her captured. But for now, she was free. And for the first time in years, she was not alone. In the silence of the tunnels, she realized something. Chains could be broken, but the past still followed. The escape was not the end. It was only the beginning. The tunnels stretched on like endless veins under the city. The dripping of water echoed with every step. Kale led the way, his small lamp throwing a faint circle of light. Behind him, Lyra walked in silence, her thoughts heavy. The fight in the alley still burned in her mind. The hunters had called her worthless, but they had chased her with such hunger. Why? If she was useless, why would they risk their lives to take her back? Kale noticed her silence. You know these tunnels well, he said. Lyra hesitated. She kept her eyes on the damp stone walls. I knew them once. A long time ago, before everything changed. Kyle slowed his pace. Tell me. The request was simple, but to her it felt like a weight. No one had asked her story in years. No one had cared. She had buried her past deep because remembering was pain. But here in the dark, with only the sound of their footsteps, the memories rose. My name is Lyra, she began, her voice soft. But that is not the name they gave me in the market. They called me slave, broken, worthless. Yet once I was not these things. Once I belonged to a family that ruled. Kyle's eyes flicked toward her. Ruled? She nodded. My people were not common. We were guardians of knowledge, holders of power older than many empires. We had cities of light, ships that crossed stars, and secrets buried in crystal halls. And my family? She paused, her throat tight. My family was of the royal line. The tunnel seemed colder after her words. Kale stopped, turning to face her fully. You're saying you were a princess? The word felt strange in her ears. That is what they once called me. But it means nothing now. My people are scattered, our empire broken. I was only a child when they came. Raiders, conquerors. They burned our halls and dragged us in chains. My family was killed. I survived only because I was small and hidden. They thought me weak. They thought me useless. Her voice shook, but her eyes hardened. And so I became what they wanted. A shadow, a prisoner. Until the day you claimed me. Silence hung between them. Kale studied her face. She expected disbelief, maybe even laughter, but he only asked, and this power your people guarded, does it still exist? Lyra's lips trembled. She wanted to lie, to say no, to hide, but the truth pressed against her chest. Yes, buried in places none remember. Locked away by bloodlines only my family carried. That is why the hunters follow. That is why they call me worthless in the market, yet chase me in the dark, because in me lies the key. Kale's eyes narrowed. The key to what? Her voice dropped to a whisper. To weapons that can end worlds. The lamp flickered. The sound of dripping water filled the space between them. Kale stood still, his expression unreadable. Lyra feared his answer. She feared he would see her as the others did, as an object, a tool, something to be used or sold. Her body tensed, ready to run, though there was nowhere to go. But Kale only said, Then we must move carefully. If they want you for this, they will not stop. She blinked at him. You believe me? He met her gaze without flinching. I've seen enough in this galaxy to know truth when I hear it. And I've seen enough greed to know they would never chase someone for nothing. Something stirred in her chest. Not trust, not yet. But a spark of it, fragile and trembling. They walked again, deeper into the tunnels. After a while, Kyle asked, Why didn't you use this power to escape before? Lyra lowered her head. Because I cannot, not yet. The knowledge is locked inside me. A code of blood passed from parent to child. I was too young when they fell. The power sleeps until I awaken it. And I never wanted to, because with it comes war. Her words broke in the quiet. Kale said nothing for a long time. Then, war comes whether we want it or not. Better you hold the key than those who would destroy everything. Lyra stopped walking. She stared at him, her heart racing. Why do you say these things? Why protect me? You don't even know me. Kyle's face hardened, shadows cutting across his features. Because once, long ago, I could not protect someone. And I swore I never would fail again. Lyra's breath caught. She saw the weight in his eyes, the pain behind his calm. His scars were not only on his skin. They were carved deep inside. Before she could speak, a noise echoed through the tunnel. Distant but clear. The hunters had found another way in. Kale's hand went to his weapon. They're coming, he said. And they won't stop until they have you. Lyra's chest tightened. Her past had found her again, dragging chains through the dark. But this time she was not alone. The tunnels were no longer safe. Echoes of footsteps chased them through the endless stone passages. Every turn seemed to bring more shadows, more whispers. Kale's lamp burned low, its glow shaking as if afraid. Lyra followed close, her heart pounding. She had told him her secret, and still he stayed. That thought gave her strength, but also fear. What if he changed his mind? What if he sold her like so many others would? At last they reached a hidden stairwell that climbed toward the surface. Rusted steps groaned under their weight. When they emerged, they were in the ruins of an old district. Broken towers, shattered glass, streets drowned in silence. Kale checked the horizon. The night sky glowed with neon, but no one walked these streets. "We'll rest here," he said. They entered a broken building, the roof half gone. A cold wind whispered through. Kyle set his weapon within reach, lit a small fire from a pack he carried, and sat with his back to the wall. Lyra curled near the warmth, her eyes heavy but her thoughts restless. For a long time they said nothing. Only the crackle of the fire spoke. Then Lyra whispered, "Kyle, you could sell me. You know that, don't you?" He looked at her sharply. "You know what I am. What I carry," she continued. "If you give me to the right buyer, you'd be rich. You'd never need to fight again." Kale's jaw tightened. His voice was hard. "Do you think I saved you for credits?" She lowered her gaze. "I don't know why you saved me." Before he could answer, a faint click echoed from above. Kale's eyes snapped to the shadows. In an instant he moved, rolling to the side, pulling Lyra down with him. A blast of energy scorched the wall where they had sat. Figures dropped from the broken ceiling. Hunters, lean, silent, armored in black. Lyra gasped. They had been followed. Kyle drew his blade, its glow sharp in the dark. The hunters closed in, weapons raised. One lunged, but Kale struck first, fast and brutal. Another fired, but Kale pushed Lyra behind him, taking the shot across his arm. He hissed in pain but did not fall. The fight was chaos, shadows and fire, blades clashing, blasts burning the air. Lyra crouched low, helpless, watching Kale move like a storm. He cut down one, then another, but more poured in. Then it happened. A hunter slipped past him, grabbing Lyra by the hair. She screamed as the alien pressed a blade to her throat. "Drop your weapon, human." The hunter snarled. Kyle froze, his chest rising heavy. The firelight flickered across his face, showing his fury. "Do it," the hunter barked. For a heartbeat, Lyra thought Kale would surrender. She thought he would choose his life over hers. But instead, his eyes locked with hers, steady and fierce. "Trust me," he said. Before she could understand, Kale moved. A flick of his wrist, his blade spun through the air, striking the hunter's throat. Blood sprayed, the grip on Lyra loosened, and she fell free. The hunter collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. Lyra scrambled back, her chest heaving. Kale caught her arm, pulling her close. "Stay down," he ordered. The fight raged on. But Kale's wound slowed him. His arm bled, his strikes less sharp. Another hunter slammed him against the wall. His weapon fell. Lyra cried out, "Kale!" The hunter raised a blade to finish him. Something inside Lyra snapped. She grabbed a broken piece of metal from the floor and struck the hunter's leg. He roared in pain, giving Kale the moment to recover. With his last strength, Kale drove his blade upward, ending the fight. Silence fell again. The bodies of hunters lay scattered in the ruins. The fire burned low, its smoke drifting into the night. Kale slumped against the wall, blood running from his arm and shoulder. His breaths were ragged. Lyra crawled to him, fear flooding her chest. "You're hurt," she whispered. "It's nothing," he muttered, though his skin was pale. Tears burned in her eyes. She pressed her hands against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You risked your life. Again. Why?" Kale's gaze softened just for a moment. "Because you are not worthless. Because you deserve more than chains." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever fought for her like this. She realized then he would never sell her. He would never trade her for credits or safety. He had chosen her, not because of her bloodline, not because of her secret, but because he saw her as more than a slave. And in that moment, Lyra made a silent vow. She would not let him fight alone again. She would not remain weak while he bled for her. The fire burned low, but inside her a new fire had awakened. The night in the ruined district never truly ended. Smoke drifted through the broken towers, and the stars above were hidden by neon haze. Kyle's wound had slowed him, yet he refused to rest for long. At dawn, he stood again, his weapon strapped to his side. Lyra watched him in silence. His face was pale, his steps heavy, but his will was unshaken. She felt guilt twist inside her. He bled because of her. He fought because of her. That morning, when the fire was nothing but ashes, Kale turned to her. "If you wish to survive, you must learn to fight." Lyra froze. "Me? I can't. I've never held a blade." "You can," Kale said firmly. "You must. The hunters will return, and next time I may not stand." The words cut her deeply. She wanted to argue, to hide behind her weakness, but the memory of Kale bleeding on the ground silenced her. She nodded, though her hands trembled. Kale found them a safe place in the ruins, an old courtyard, its walls cracked but standing. Here each day he trained her. At first she stumbled. The blade was heavy, her arms weak. She fell more than she stood. But Kale did not shout or mock. He guided her, steady and patient. Not strength, he said, moving her hands. Control. Focus. The days passed, and little by little she improved. She learned how to block, how to strike, how to move with speed rather than power. She learned where to place her feet, how to read the enemy's eyes. But training was more than fighting. Kale taught her survival, how to listen for danger, how to find water in ruins, how to see traps before stepping into them. At night, when the fires burned low, he told her stories. Not long ones, not gentle ones. Stories of war, of battles lost and won, of friends buried under alien suns. He spoke rarely of himself, but Lyra could hear the scars in his words. In return, she spoke of her people. Slowly, carefully, she gave him pieces of her past. Songs her mother once sang, the gardens of crystal towers, the maps etched into her memory. Kale listened, always silent, always watchful. Through training and silence, something grew between them. Not yet trust, not yet friendship, but a bond forged in danger. Still, the storm outside the ruins never rested. Rumors spread across the city. Whispers of hunters searching every street. Whispers of warships gathering at the edge of the system. One night, as they rested, Lyra overheard voices outside the ruins. She and Kale pressed against the wall, listening. They say the girl is alive, one alien muttered. The royal bloodline. If she awakens the weapon, every empire will burn. Then we must find her before the others do, another hissed. The market failed. The hunters failed. But the lords will not stop. They want her alive. The voices faded into the dark, but the words stayed. Lyra turned to Kale, fear in her eyes. They're hunting me everywhere. It won't end. Kale's face was grim. It won't, but fear changes nothing. You must be ready. The next morning, their training grew harder. Kale pressed her more, forcing her to fight with speed, to use her mind as much as her blade. You are not weak, he said each time she fell. Stand. Again. Lyra's body ached, her hands blistered, but inside she felt something new, a strength she thought was lost. A spark of the fire that once belonged to her bloodline. One evening, during training, Kale struck harder than before. Lyra blocked barely, then pushed back. For the first time, she saw surprise in his eyes. Better, he said, his voice almost approving. She breathed hard, sweat running down her face. I will not be weak anymore, she whispered. Kyle nodded. Good, because the storm is coming. And the storm came sooner than they thought. On the fourth night in the ruins, the sky above trembled with the roar of engines. Warships descended, their lights burning like fire across the horizon. The city below panicked. Sirens wailed, crowds screamed. From the courtyard, Kale and Lyra watched the ships pierce the clouds. The symbols on their hulls were not of traders or hunters. These were warlords, armies that crushed worlds. Lyra's chest tightened. They've come for me. Kale's hand tightened on his blade. His eyes were hard. Then we move before they land. The ground shook as explosions thundered in the distance. Fires lit the city skyline. The storm had begun. Lyra gripped the blade he had given her. She was no warrior yet, but she was no longer only a slave. She felt the blood of her people burning in her veins. And as the warships filled the sky, she knew the choice ahead was no longer escape. It was survival. It was destiny. The city burned under the shadow of warships. Towers crumbled, lights died, and the screams of thousands filled the air. From the broken courtyard, Lyra watched the flames rise. The storm Kale had warned her of was no longer coming. It was here. Kale tightened the straps on his arm, though his wound still throbbed. He picked up his blade, his jaw set. They won't stop. Not until they have you. Lyra's hands trembled around the weapon he had given her. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish into the ruins. But the sky above told her there was no place left to run. In the distance, a column of armored soldiers marched through the streets. Their leader was tall, his armor marked with the black sigil of the warlords. His voice boomed through a speaker carried on the wind. Bring me the girl. The soldiers spread out, burning everything in their path. Kyle looked at Lyra. Listen to me. If they take you alive, the galaxy burns. If I fall, you run. Do you hear me? Her heart clenched. Kale, I can't leave you. You can, he said, firm. You must. But deep inside, Lyra knew she could not. She had been running all her life, running from chains, from hunters, from her own bloodline. But Kale had fought for her, bled for her, believed in her when no one else had. She could not abandon him now. The soldiers closed in, their weapons glowing. Kale stood at the front, blade in hand. Lyra rose beside him. Her body shook, but her eyes no longer lowered. The first wave struck. Kale moved fast, cutting down two before they fired. Lyra blocked clumsily, the shock of impact rattling her arms, but she did not fall. She struck back, her blade scraping against armor, forcing her enemy away. The battle spilled across the ruins. Fire burned, stone cracked, and the clash of steel and energy filled the night. But for every soldier they felled, more came. The leader stepped forward at last, towering over them, his weapon humming with deadly light. "You are the last of your line," he said to Lyra. "Your blood carries the key. Come willingly, and I may let the human live." Lyra froze. The choice stabbed at her like a blade. If she surrendered, Kale might live, but the galaxy would fall. If she refused, Kale would die here now in front of her. She looked at Kale. His eyes, even through pain, were steady. "Don't listen," he said. "Your fate is yours to choose." The words struck something deep inside her. She remembered her family's voices, her people's songs, the gardens of crystal towers. She remembered chains biting her wrists, auctioneers calling her worthless, hunters chasing her like prey. She remembered Kale's voice in the market. "I'll claim her." And she realized for the first time she was no longer unwanted. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was clear, stronger than she had ever heard it. "I was a slave once. I was unwanted. But now I choose my own fate," the leader laughed. "You? You are nothing." But as he raised his weapon, something within Lyra awoke. A fire in her blood, a pulse in her veins. The air around her shimmered, the ground trembled. Her blade glowed with light, not of Kale's world, but of her own, the power of her ancestors. The key locked in her bloodline. The soldiers faltered, fear in their eyes. Kale stepped back, stunned. Lyra lifted the blade, and with a cry she unleashed the power. A wave of energy burst from her, striking the soldiers, throwing them back like leaves in a storm. The leader staggered, his armor cracking under the force. "This is my choice," she said, her voice ringing through the ruins. The leader roared and charged, but Lyra met him head-on. Their blades clashed, sparks lighting the night. He was strong, but she was no longer weak. With each strike she pushed harder, her bloodline's power guiding her. At last, with one final cry, she drove her blade through his chest. Light exploded and the leader fell, his weapon shattering to dust. The battlefield grew silent. The remaining soldiers fled into the burning streets, their courage broken. Lyra stood in the ruins, her blade still glowing, her body shaking. She had done it, not as a slave, not as a princess, but as herself. Kale approached slowly, blood on his arm, awe in his eyes. "You've awakened it," he said. Lyra lowered the blade, meeting his gaze. "No, I chose it, and I chose to fight." For a moment they stood in silence, the firelight painting their faces. Around them the city burned, and above the warships still filled the sky. The storm was far from over, but Lyra was no longer a girl in chains. She was no longer unwanted. She was a flame in the darkness, and with Kale beside her, she would face whatever came. And as the war spread across the stars, the galaxy would remember this night, the night the unwanted slave rose to claim her destiny.